I was in the middle of reviewing a zoning proposal when my phone buzzed angrily on the desk. Lorraine, my mother, was calling. I hesitated, knowing that a call from her usually meant something was about to go sideways. With a deep breath, I picked up. "Arden, thank goodness you answered," she exclaimed, her voice teetering on the edge of hysteria. "Have you seen what Sloan posted? She's saying you're trying to ruin her career." My heart dropped. "What are you talking about, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I haven't done anything to Sloan. She's made a video, Arden. It's all over her social media. She's accusing you of sabotaging her deals, saying you've been spreading lies about her to her sponsors." I could feel my face heating up, a mix of anger and disbelief. "That's ridiculous. Why would I do that?" "I don't know, but you need to fix this. People are talking, and it's not just her followers. Your job could be at risk." I hung up, my mind racing. My name is Arden, and I've always been the planner, the one who keeps things together. But right now, everything felt like it was falling apart. I opened my laptop and pulled up Sloane's account. There it was, her face framed perfectly, eyes brimming with tears as she spun a tale of betrayal. My betrayal. My office door creaked open, and my colleague, Jenna, peeked in. "Hey, Arden, is everything okay? There's some talk about you and your sister." "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, though I wasn't sure if that was true. "Just a misunderstanding." Jenna nodded, but her eyes said she wasn't convinced. "If you need anything, let me know." I nodded, grateful for her concern, but knowing I had to handle this on my own. As I watched Sloane's video play out, I couldn't help but notice the cracks in her performance. Her voice wavered slightly, her eyes darted away from the camera at key moments. There was more to this than met the eye. I called Sloane, but it went straight to voicemail. Typical. She was probably basking in the attention, loving every second of the drama she'd created. I slammed my laptop shut, trying to focus on the immediate task, damage control. But my thoughts kept drifting back to the why. Why would Sloane do this? We'd had our differences, sure, but this was a whole new level of sibling rivalry. The phone buzzed again, this time a text from Leo, my best friend. "Saw the video. You okay?" I typed back quickly, "Not really." "Can we meet later?" "Of course." Usual spot. "Yeah." As I sat back in my chair, the reality of the situation settled over me like a heavy fog. This wasn't just about a video or a few rumors. It was about trust, family, and the unraveling of everything I'd worked so hard to build. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, not just for my sake, but for the sake of whatever was left of my relationship with Sloane. The question was, where to start? And how far was I willing to go to uncover the truth? I found myself standing outside my parents' front door, the familiar scent of freshly cut grass and Lorraine's rose garden doing little to calm my nerves. I needed answers, and I needed them now. The door swung open before I could knock, and there was Lorraine, looking as composed as ever, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "Arden, come in," she said, stepping aside. Her voice was smooth, almost too smooth, like she was trying to gloss over the chaos Sloane had unleashed. I walked in, my mind racing with questions. "Mom, what's going on? Why would Sloane do this?" She sighed, leading me to the kitchen where Gerald sat, newspaper in hand, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He gave me a nod, his usual greeting, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "Arden, we didn't expect things to get so out of hand," Lorraine began, her tone carefully measured. "You didn't expect it?" I echoed, incredulous. "She's accusing me of sabotaging her life, and you're worried about things getting out of hand?" "We're trying to manage it, Arden," Gerald interjected, his voice calm but firm. "Sloane's got a lot riding on her image." "And what about my image?" I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "I have a career too, one that doesn't revolve around likes and followers." Lorraine placed a hand on my arm, a gesture meant to soothe, but only adding to my irritation. "We're just asking you to be patient. Let us handle this." "Handle it how?" I demanded. "By ignoring it? By letting her walk all over me?" Gerald cleared his throat, setting the newspaper aside. "It's not that simple, Arden. Sloane's complicated. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Complicated? She's reckless, and you're enabling her. Lorraine's eyes hardened, a flash of defensiveness. We're supporting her, just like we've always supported you. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I looked between them, something clicking into place. How much support are we talking about here? Neither of them answered, but the silence was telling. Are you funding her lifestyle? I pressed, my voice rising. Is that why she feels untouchable? Gerald shifted uncomfortably, and Lorraine's gaze dropped to the floor. We've helped her out, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I replied, stepping back, feeling the walls of the house closing in. You've been bankrolling her, and now she's dragging me through the mud, and you're worried about her image? Arden, please, Lorraine pleaded, but I was already moving toward the door, my mind a storm of betrayal and disbelief. Outside, the air was cool, a stark contrast to the heat of the conversation. I pulled out my phone and texted Leo. I need to talk. His reply was instant. I'm here. Usual spot. Yeah, I typed back, needing the comfort of our routine, something steady amidst the chaos. As I drove, the reality of my family's fractured bonds settled in. Sloane's antics weren't just affecting her, they were tearing us apart. And now, with the revelation of my parents' financial support, the stakes were higher than I'd imagined. I needed to find a way to navigate this minefield without losing myself in the process. But first, I had to figure out how deep this rabbit hole went. I met Leo at our usual cafe, the kind of place where the baristas know your name and your order by heart. He was already there, a comforting presence amidst the chaos. As I slid into the seat across from him, he gave me a sympathetic look. You okay? Not even close, I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug in front of me. It's a mess, Leo. Sloane's accusations, my parents' support of her. I don't even know where to start. Leo nodded, listening intently. He had always been my rock, the one person who could see through the facade and understand the real me. You need to talk to Sloane, he suggested gently. Get her side of the story. I sighed, knowing he was right but dreading the confrontation. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. She's probably too busy playing the victim. Maybe, Leo said, leaning back. But you won't know unless you try again. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I'll try to catch her at home. Maybe face-to-face will get through to her. Later that day, I found myself standing outside Sloane's apartment, the city noise a distant hum. I knocked, half hoping she wouldn't answer. But the door swung open, and there she was, looking surprised to see me. Arden, she said, her voice a mix of surprise and wariness. What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Can I come in? She hesitated but stepped aside, allowing me in. Her apartment was immaculate, every detail curated for the perfect Instagram shot. I wondered how much of it was real and how much was just for show. What do you want to talk about? She asked, crossing her arms defensively. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Why, Sloane? Why did you accuse me of something I didn't do? She looked away, her expression shifting. It's complicated, Arden. Complicated how? I pressed, feeling the frustration build. You're messing with my life, my career. I deserve to know why. She sighed, her facade cracking just a little. I was scared, okay? Scared of losing everything I've built. Mom said. She said you were trying to undermine me. I blinked, trying to process her words. Mom said that? Why would she say that? Sloane shrugged, her eyes finally meeting mine. She's worried about the family image. She thought if I made a big deal, it would distract people from other things. Other things. I echoed, my mind racing. Like what? Sloane hesitated, biting her lip. I don't know all the details. Just that things aren't as perfect as they seem. The pieces were starting to fit together, but it was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing parts. Sloane, this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. We're family. She nodded, her defenses lowering. I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. I was just desperate. I could see the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "We need to fix this," I said softly. "Together." She nodded again, this time with more conviction. "Okay, but where do we start?" I didn't have all the answers, but I knew we had to start somewhere. As I left her apartment, I felt the weight of our conversation. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was a start. And for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. We could face this, but only if we faced it together. After leaving Sloane's apartment, I decided to take a walk through the city. The familiar streets were alive with the usual hustle, but my mind was miles away, tangled in the mess of family drama. My phone buzzed incessantly with work emails, but I ignored them, knowing I needed to focus on the bigger picture. I found myself at a small park, the kind with benches that invite introspection. As I sat down, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. The realization that my family wasn't as solid as I'd believed was a hard pill to swallow. I thought of Sloane's confession, her fear of losing everything, and Lorraine's manipulations to keep up appearances. It was all so exhausting. I was pulled from my thoughts by a voice. "Arden?" It was Leo, jogging toward me. "I thought I'd find you here." "Hey," I said, managing a small smile. "Needed a break from reality." "Understandable," he replied, sitting beside me. "How did it go with Sloane?" "She admitted Mom's been pulling strings behind the scenes," I said, shaking my head. "I don't even know why anymore. It's like she's playing some twisted game." Leo nodded, thoughtful. "Do you think Lorraine's hiding something bigger? Something that could explain all this?" I shrugged, the uncertainty gnawing at me. "I don't know, but I need to find out. I can't keep living with all these half-truths." Leo gave me a reassuring pat on the back. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I hoped he was right, but the path forward was murky. That evening, I decided to confront Lorraine again. I needed to hear her side, to understand what she was protecting so fiercely. As I approached my parents' house, the air felt charged, like a storm was brewing. Lorraine opened the door, a practiced smile on her face. "Arden, come in." I followed her to the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. "I talked to Sloane," I began, watching her reaction closely. "She told me you've been orchestrating things." Lorraine's smile faltered, just for a second. "Arden, I only want what's best for the family." "And what's that, exactly?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Keeping up appearances while everything falls apart?" She sighed, a flicker of something guilt, maybe, crossing her face. "This isn't just about Sloane, Arden. There are things you don't understand." "Then help me understand," I pressed, my frustration bubbling over. "I'm tired of being kept in the dark." She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might finally open up. But then she shook her head. "It's complicated." "Complicated doesn't cut it anymore, Mom," I said, my voice firm. I deserve to know the truth. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between maintaining control and letting go. But before she could respond, Gerald walked in, his expression serious. "Arden, there's something you need to know." I looked between them, my heart pounding. "What is it?" Gerald took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "Our finances aren't what they seem. We're in trouble, Arden. Real trouble." The room seemed to tilt, the revelation knocking the wind out of me. "What do you mean?" Lorraine's composure cracked, her voice trembling. "We've been trying to keep it from you and Sloane, but the debts, the loans, it's all catching up to us." I stared at them, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. This was the secret they'd been hiding, the reason for Lorraine's desperate attempts to control everything. And it changed everything. The stakes were higher than I'd realized, and now I had to decide how to navigate this new reality. The next morning, I found myself pacing my apartment, the revelation of my parents' financial troubles still echoing in my mind. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, leaving me unsteady and unsure of my next move. The weight of it all, the accusations, the lies, the hidden debts, felt like a storm gathering strength, threatening to sweep me away. I knew I needed to speak with Sloane again, to push past the surface and get to the heart of our family's dysfunction. But before I could reach out, my phone buzzed with a call from Leo. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice a lifeline. "Not really," I admitted, rubbing my temples. "It's like everything's unraveling, and I don't know how to stop it." "Have you talked to Sloan?" he asked, ever the voice of reason. "Not since yesterday," I replied, glancing at the clock. "I'm heading over there now." "Good. Just be careful, Arden. There's a lot at stake." I hung up, his words lingering in my mind. As I made my way to Sloan's, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was lurking beneath the surface, something I hadn't yet uncovered. When I arrived, Sloan was sitting on her balcony, her phone in hand, scrolling through an endless feed of curated perfection. "Arden," she said, looking up with a hint of surprise. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." "We need to talk," I said, cutting to the chase. "About everything. The accusations, the debts, Mom and Dad." She sighed, setting her phone aside. "I know. It's all a mess." "More than a mess," I corrected, taking a seat across from her. "It's a disaster. And we're all caught in the middle." Sloan nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said, about fixing this together." "And?" I prompted, sensing there was more. "And I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of what happens if we can't fix it?" Her vulnerability caught me off guard, a reminder that beneath her bravado, she was just as lost as I was. "We have to try," I said, my voice firm. "But we need to know everything. No more secrets." She hesitated, a flicker of something crossing her face. "There's something else," she confessed, her eyes meeting mine. "Something Mom said." "About you. What about me?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. "She thinks you're planning to leave," Sloan said, her words like a punch to the gut. "That you're going to walk away from all of this from us." I blinked, taken aback. "Why would she think that?" "I don't know," Sloan replied, her brow furrowing. "But it's why she's been so desperate to control everything. She's afraid you'll abandon us." The accusation stung, a reminder of how deeply Lorraine's manipulations ran. But it also made me question my own motives. Was I really considering leaving? Was that the only way to escape the chaos? As I sat there, grappling with the implications, I realized that my perception of justice, of what was right and fair, was being tested in ways I hadn't anticipated. Could I find a way to mend our fractured family, or was I destined to become the very thing Lorraine feared? The questions hung heavy in the air, unanswered and unresolved. But one thing was clear: the storm was far from over, and I had to decide whether to weather it or walk away. The family meeting was set for Sunday evening, a time that seemed to loom like a dark cloud over the weekend. I arrived at my parents' house, feeling as if I were walking into a battlefield. The stakes were higher than ever, and I had to confront the truth, no matter how painful. The living room was tense, a silent testament to the turmoil beneath the surface. Lorraine sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, Gerald beside her, looking more worn than I'd ever seen. Sloan was already there, scrolling through her phone, her facade of confidence barely holding. I took a deep breath, breaking the silence. "We need to talk about everything," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "No more secrets." Lorraine glanced at Gerald, then back at me. "Arden, we've been trying to protect you and Sloan." "Protect us from what?" I asked, leaning forward. "From the truth? From the fact that everything's falling apart." Sloan set her phone down, looking between us. "Mom, Dad, we deserve to know what's really going on." Gerald sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've been struggling financially for a while now. The debts, the loans. They're more than we can handle." "And you thought hiding it would help?" I asked, feeling the weight of their deception. "You let Sloan blame me, let her think I was the enemy." Lorraine's eyes glistened, a rare crack in her composure. "I didn't know what else to do. I thought if we kept up appearances, we could find a way out." "At what cost?" I pressed, my voice rising. "You've been tearing us apart, all for the sake of an image." Sloan shifted uncomfortably, her usual bravado replaced by uncertainty. "I didn't know it was this bad." "We didn't want you to worry," Gerald said, his voice heavy with regret. but it's all spiraled out of control. The room fell silent, each of us grappling with the reality of our situation. It felt as if we were standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong move away from disaster. Then, as if sensing the need for a final blow, Lorraine spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "There's more. We might lose the house." The words hit like a punch to the gut, the ground beneath me crumbling. The house, the one constant in our lives, was slipping away. I looked at Sloane, her eyes wide with shock. For all her faults, this was her home too, the place we'd both grown up. "What do we do?" Sloane asked, her voice small, vulnerable. I didn't have an answer. The path ahead seemed impossibly steep, the obstacles insurmountable. But deep down, I knew we had to fight. Not just for the house, but for each other. For the family we'd lost touch with amidst the lies and facades. "We face it," I said finally, my voice firm. "Together. We find a way, even if it seems impossible." The resolution felt fragile, like a thread stretched too thin. But it was all we had, and for now, it had to be enough. As I looked around the room, I saw the flicker of hope in their eyes, a glimmer of the unity we'd once shared. It was a start, and in that moment, it was everything. The evening air was thick with tension as we gathered in the living room once more, the weight of our unresolved conflicts hanging heavily between us. This was it, the moment where everything would come to a head. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of how much was at stake. Lorraine stood by the window, her back to us, as if looking out might somehow provide answers. Gerald was seated, his hands clasped together, a picture of quiet resignation. Sloane sat on the edge of the couch, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy that seemed to radiate from her. I took a deep breath, stepping into the center of the room. "We need to address this once and for all," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "No more hiding, no more pretending. We have to face the truth." Lorraine turned, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. "And what truth is that, Arden?" "That we're not the perfect family you've tried so hard to portray," I said, meeting her gaze. "We're broken, and it's time we admit it." Sloane shifted, her eyes flicking to Lorraine. "Mom, we can't keep doing this. The lies, the debts. It's tearing us apart." Gerald sighed deeply, his voice weary. "We've lost sight of what really matters." Lorraine's eyes flashed, a last-ditch effort to maintain control. "I was only trying to protect us, to keep us together. By pushing us further apart?" I countered, my frustration boiling over. "This isn't protection, Mom. It's suffocation." The words hung in the air, a challenge that demanded a response. Lorraine hesitated, her defenses crumbling as the reality of our situation became undeniable. Then, unexpectedly, Sloane spoke up, her voice soft but resolute. "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time I step back. From all of it." We all turned to her, surprised by the admission. "What do you mean?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She took a deep breath, her vulnerability on full display. "The social media, the constant need for validation. It's not worth losing my family over. I've been hiding behind it for too long." It was a revelation I hadn't anticipated, a twist that shifted the dynamics in the room. Her willingness to change, to confront her own demons, was a catalyst for deeper introspection. Lorraine's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving her. "I never wanted this for you," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought I was helping, but I see now I was wrong." Gerald reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "We can fix this, Lorraine. Together." I watched as the walls between us began to crumble, the barriers of pride and deception giving way to something more honest. It was a start, a tentative step toward healing. In that moment, I realized that the themes of revenge and justice I'd been grappling with were evolving. This wasn't about retribution or punishment. It was about finding a way forward, about rebuilding what had been broken. As we sat together, the silence was no longer oppressive, but filled with the promise of something new. It was an unexpected resolution, one that didn't rely on perfect answers, but on the willingness to try. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. The weeks following our family meeting were a whirlwind of change and reflection. We each took steps, small but significant, toward rebuilding the fractured bonds between us. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the weight of our past mistakes felt almost unbearable. But for the first time in a long time, we were moving forward together. I returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose, channeling the lessons I'd learned into my projects. My focus shifted toward advocating for transparency and community engagement, values I realized were crucial not just in my professional life, but in my personal relationships as well. One afternoon, as I was wrapping up a meeting, my phone buzzed with a message from Sloan. "Coffee?" It read simply. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had been absent for too long. We were reconnecting, learning to trust each other again, and it felt good. We met at a quaint little cafe, the kind of place that felt like a safe haven. Sloan was already there, a cup of tea in hand, her expression relaxed and open. "Hey," she greeted, a genuine smile lighting up her face. "Hey," I replied, settling into the chair opposite her. "How's everything going?" She nodded, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Better. I've been taking a break from social media, trying to figure out what I really want." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for her. "It's important to find what makes you happy beyond all the noise." She sipped her tea, thoughtful. "I've been thinking about starting a blog, something more personal and meaningful." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Really? That sounds like a great idea." "Yeah," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "I want to write about real experiences, not just the highlights. Maybe it'll help others too." As we talked, I could see the change in her, the way she was beginning to embrace authenticity over appearances. It was a journey, one I was proud to see her embark on. After we parted ways, I returned home to find a letter waiting for me, the handwriting unmistakably Gerald's. I opened it, my curiosity piqued. "Arden," it began, "I've watched you navigate these challenges with strength and grace. I regret not being more supportive, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. Keep forging your own path and never doubt your worth." The words struck a chord, a reminder of how far we'd come and how much further we could go. I tucked the letter away, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. As I sat by the window, watching the world go by, I reflected on the journey we'd all taken. The themes of revenge and justice had evolved into something more profound: understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to face our truths. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew we were stronger for having faced the storm together. And as I looked out at the world beyond, I felt ready for whatever came next, knowing I was valued not for what I achieved, but for who I was.